Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Hingham dated 16 October 2018. There's no minutes to approve tonight. Public comment, hearing none. Let's get right to it.
Nope, over here.
Okay, I see two hands. Which one? Or
Well,
both?
yeah, so, yeah, we'll be brief.
Please go to the podium, identify yourself by name and address.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Breton. I live at 8 Volunteer Road in Hingham.
Elizabeth Molds at 70 Winter Street, Hingham.
Elizabeth and I both work with the group Hingham Residents Against the Compressor Station. And we are here to specifically ask for an update on the task force. I understand that there was some information delivered in July. We'd like to request a follow-up.
Okay.
Further, do you want to give an update?
Sure. We just wanted to mention that we went to the October 2nd meeting of the LEPC, of the area LEPCs in Weymouth.
The Local Emergency Planning Committee.
And we were hoping that the Board of Selectmen and Hingham's LEPC could be persuaded to watch the meeting, which is available online, as only Hingham's fire chief was there representing the town of Hingham. So I have the link here if you'd like to take a look. And I was also reviewing July 10th meeting when you heard from the committee, and I think there was a question as to the dates involved regarding the air permit. And we wanted to clarify that the draft air permit is scheduled to issue on or before January 11th of 2019. So any action that the town of Hingham should take should probably happen before that time.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Could we please make a request to be on the Board of Selectmen's next agenda for the next meeting?
I'll take it under advisement. I need to talk to the town administrator and see exactly where we are on this issue.
We're running out of time. We only have a very small window for an issue that's pretty concerning to the town and growing. We just recently had a fundraiser, had 250 people there and raised a significant amount of money. Wish you would consider it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Al.
Thanks.
My name is Al Chambers. I live at 86 Central Street, the Lincoln School. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of speaking to you about a couple of problems that I wanted to see, hoped you would address. One of them being the town forest. The town forest to me is a danger, and it's badly overgrown. It has never been properly forested. It needs fire trails. It needs the fire ponds that exist up there dug back out, and it needs to be thinned dramatically and have deciduous trees added to it. Now, the reason I mention that is last week I was sitting at home in the splendor of the Lincoln School apartments, listening to the meeting, and the CPC asked for consideration of a statue for General Benjamin Lincoln, who I am a real fan of. And one of the comments that Mary made to the committee was that when you do this, try to do this in a manner that will not add a lot of stress to the Public Works Department in terms of maintenance. That bothered me a lot, and I'll tell you why. We've got parks failing all over this town, and badly. The town forest is one of them. There is an island in the cove downtown between the old police station and the auction house. It's an 8-acre island that has been allowed to completely go back to forestation. It used to be a beautiful place where you could sit and look out over the harbor across the conduit at 3A and out over the Button Island and the rest of them. Stunning, stunning place. I have classmates who had their wedding reception there, but you can't find that place. It's hard to see it. It has curb cuts. It had a building on it, and for years The Knights of Columbus used it for a lot of events, and it's just gone. I'd like to see it restored. The third one is the beautifully named Tranquility Grove. Same problem. I'd like to see it opened up and the entrances re-emphasized on the Central Street side, because we have theoretically a hiking trails program underway. So the comments that bothered me by Mary last week were, it seems to me that we're letting the projects that we have, or the many assets that we have, be governed by the number of people in the Public Works Department. And to me, that's the tail wagging the dog. If we need more people and more help to keep these things open and running and attractive and safe, let's add to our Public Works Department and make it possible for them to, I think, and I really mean this, I think they do a hell of a job. They make this town shine at Christmas, and they make it shine at July 4th, and it just impresses me. But we're losing some major facilities that are a real bonus to Hingham. And thank you very much for listening to me.
You're welcome, Al. Ladies and gentlemen, just so that it's clear, the public comment is an opportunity for the public to speak to items not on the agenda. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will engage, because we don't want to run afoul of the open meeting law, but nonetheless, the request by Mr. Chambers will be addressed in some form or another, as well as the compressor station issue at a future meeting.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome, Al. At this point, I'd invite the Route 3A Task Force to join us at the table and give us a update with respect to the work that's being done on the Route 3A Summer Rockland Street corridor.
Roger. Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Sneath. I live at 89 North Street, and I'm the chair of the 3A Task Force. We were appointed by the Board of Selectmen last September to coordinate an extensive safety improvement project along Route 3A from the Cove, from where the Lobster Pound is, over to Muzzy's Corner. And the design work for that project had been approved by town meeting in 2015. Our group came together to shepherd the project through to the 25% design, which is what we'd like to talk to you about tonight. On this task force, we have Paul Healy, myself, Deirdre Anderson, Bryce Blair, and Alan Peralt, along with our town engineering department, Roger Fernandez and Tom Melinari, and well supported by Carol Costello, also in that department. Most notably, in July, our group coordinated the road diet pilot, which restricted the lanes from the Rotary through to Muzzy's Corner, more or less, to one lane in each direction as a test. We coordinated that project very closely with Mass DOT, with two different engineering firms, and with public safety officials in Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset. Happy to say that the results of the study were also presented to the town of Hingham and at an additional meeting to the town of Hull. And the data collected showed, I'm not giving it away if I tell, right? No. Okay. And in case you didn't see the hearing, the data showed that although there was a small increase of about 20 to 50 seconds in time to get through the area in in either direction, traveling through this area with the lane reduction is still the preferred route, and still faster than any of the alternate routes through the neighborhood, which was one of our concerns. The second concern was that public safety vehicles travel through the area undeterred, and that also was a success during the pilot. So we have basically gotten the endorsement from the chiefs of police and fire in the 3 towns and from the engineering firms that reviewed the data that we collected during the project, so that the lane reduction is now part of the plans that Roger is going to show you tonight that are all focused on improving the safety in this area. In addition to the presentation from Roger, we just want to touch a little bit on a town meeting warrant article and on discussions we've been having with residents of part of the roadway that is not included right now in the study. But I'll let you
Okay, sure.
do that.
Can everyone see that first of all? We're gonna put up some drawings that might be difficult to see. Is it more? Let me just give you- Is this okay?
Yep, works for me.
So, as Judy indicated, this project has been 3 years in the making, and so I certainly don't intend to give you 3 years' worth of work in 15 minutes. That's going to be impossible to do. But generally, we'd like to give you an overview of where we are, how we ended up here, and hopefully what the next steps are going to be. As we begin to discuss those and look at the actual sections of the plans, and by sections I mean different parts of 3A and how those, how we hope to make those look as part of the design. I did want to give you again a little context. As Judy said, we've been working on this for a while, and the main catalyst behind this is, of course, the accidents. What we found through a number of studies, but in particular the CTPS study, that's a Central Transportation Planning Staff study, that's a wing of the Executive Office of Transportation. They came to the town of Hingham and did a corridor study that included the section that you're going to see here today and actually extended all the way into Hull. And what that study demonstrated is that not only do we have excessive amount of accidents along the corridor, but in particular between the section of the rotary along Summer Street, but also in the rotary itself. So we have those accidents, but there's a significant amount of, or high amount of injury to accidents. So if you're in an accident in that location along that stretch of Summer Street, you have a 30 or 40% chance that you're taking a trip in an ambulance. So obviously that's not acceptable. And the CTPS study, again, undertaken by the state, introduced some potential alternatives. We looked at those alternatives. Some of those are implemented in the plan you're about to see. But above and beyond that, what we do is we model the roadway in a way that helps us understand if these alternatives would work with respect to traffic volumes. So we run a number of models. Those models indicated that it would work, a lane reduction or lane changes. And then we went one step further, and a very unique opportunity is we introduced this pilot, or this test, if you will, and I'm sure most of you have seen it, where we actually installed delineators, those white pylons that reduced the lanes just to see what the impacts of traffic would be. Now those pylons are not the final product. The actual design will look different, and you'll see that in a moment. So to that end, we've gathered quite a bit of information, impacts on other roadway networks, understanding the speeds. As Judy said, we've collaborated extensively with public safety in Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset, and met with those folks at least on 4 different occasions. So I think we've done a pretty good job in terms of communicating. So with that, I think I'll start off by at least describing the limits of work. And the limits of work are from Broad Cove, many of us know that location is the Lobster Pound intersection, and continuing through and past the Bathing Beach parking lot, continuing west past Ship Street and past North Street into the Rotary, past the Rotary, up Summer Street by Martin's Lane, up that section that then turns into Rockland Street, up to the intersection of Rockland Street and George Washington Boulevard. So one of the questions might be, well, why just that limit? Why not longer? Why not shorter? So when we began to look at the project, there are a couple of things we have to consider. One, of course, is the funding opportunity, both from the municipal level, from the town itself, because in these types of projects, it's incumbent upon the town to pay for the design and the permitting in order to advance it to what's called the tip process. The TIP is the Transportation Improvement Program. That program, we submit a design to the state, hopefully they accept it, and then they fund the construction. And as the project gets bigger, that sweet spot for funding gets smaller. We're competing with other projects. So we try to stay in and around that $3 to $7 or $8 million range. Once we get above that, it becomes less likely that the project will be programmed for funding in the near future. So again, as we lengthen the project or make the project more complex, the less likely that it's going to happen in the near future. So when we begin to look at the start of the project, the Broad Cove location, within a lot of the section of the 3A, there's limited right-of-way. Right-of-way meaning that's what MassDOT owns. That's where we're allowed to work. Anything outside of the right-of-way means we're looking at land takings or impacting private property. So in this particular location, not only do we have to contend with that, but we also have to worry about a culvert that exists there. And removal of that culvert or changes in that culvert trigger a number of things, including several state permits and significant cost to the project, again, taking us out of that sweet spot in terms of cost. So in this particular location, the idea is to really bring the folks, the neighborhoods from Otis Hill, comfortably down into the Grove and waterfront area. There wasn't enough right-of-way to install a sidewalk on both sides, a sidewalk that would feel comfortable to walk on. So what we're showing here is a wider sidewalk with a grass strip. Sometimes we refer to that as a recovery zone, basically giving the walker or the pedestrian or and maybe even the bicyclist in this case a more comfortable feeling, so you're not right on top of the traffic. So we're looking at potentially a 10-foot walk there, a 3-foot grass strip, a 5-foot shoulder, and 2 11-foot lanes. And on the other side of the roadway, on the south side is typically always the bottom of the page, an additional 6.5-foot shoulder. So again, the idea is to provide room for the motorists, of course, but also to provide a comfortable walking feeling for the pedestrians. One of the things we'll look at as we go on to the next slides is we've got to establish equity within the road. It's required by MassDOT, so we get questions sometimes, well, why are you putting a sidewalk here, or why are you putting a sidewalk there? Nobody walks on that. We're required to do those things, to install bicycle accommodations and pedestrian accommodations as a requirement. If we don't do that, we actually have to go through a process which is called a design exception. And sometimes that's required, but we actually would have to make the case to the state to ask them to sort of take something away from the project that is typically required as part of the design. So as we continue through the next section, the sidewalk and lane configuration now is followed. Again, a 10-foot multi-use path, and I should say the 10 feet is the width that's required if you want to assign both pedestrians and bicyclists to that pathway. So 10 feet means that if you want to ride your bike on that, and, along with walkers, you can do that. There's still a substantial grass strip that travels along that way, and here we begin to open up the roadway to 2 lanes in each direction, which is what you see there now. We're also able to introduce a 5-foot sidewalk on the southern portion of the roadway. Now we're approaching the bathing beach parking lot, the lights that we see there now. One thing that we really want to fight for and hope that the state will approve, we have to make a case for this, is new signalization and new pedestrian accommodations at that location, meaning that when you get to that intersection, there'll be an actuated ped crossing. You push the button, the lights change. Right now, the lights function wonderfully in terms of access to the parking lot itself. And so, we need to keep that there and try to introduce this into the project. So it would be new signals, again, new ped accommodations, and just a cleaner intersection overall. In terms of the layout, still a 10-foot wide multi-use path, a grass strip of varying widths, a shoulder of 3 feet, and the 11-foot lanes, 2 in each direction. Okay. So one of the things we're going to, so we, as we began to look at this, we, there's a number of other projects going on in and around the waterfront. The exact location of this walkway, we're still discussing. As a matter of fact, this overall design is all subject to MassDOT approval, but it's still a working process. The specific location of that multi-use path may change as we begin to consider the other things going on the waterfront. And does a sort of a utilitarian sidewalk belong closer to the 3A section, and then a more comfortable waterfront walk belong closer to the water? But the intent here is still the same, where we want to be able to provide a multi-use path for bicyclists and pedestrians. Lane configuration also remains the same. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the next one. I think kind of gives us a sense of what's going on. So here we begin to see some geometric changes that we think are going to greatly improve what's going on there now. So currently, if you're headed west on 3A and approaching North Street, there's a jockeying of position as you approach the lights if there's someone in the left-hand lane trying to make a left turn. So I'll repeat that. So if you're in the left-hand lane trying to make a left turn and somebody's behind you, they want to quickly, and they want to go straight on 3A, they quickly try to move to the side. And guess what? The 5-year studies that we've looked at in terms of accidents indicate that there are accidents that demonstrate exactly that. So ideally, as you see here, we want to be able to introduce a dedicated left-hand turn lane with queuing that allows for traffic to wait at that location. That length is predetermined based on the amount of left-hand turns that we know take place there. So we physically go out there, and cars are counted, in a given hour. How many cars make a left? How many cars make a left?
The red dot that you can show.
I think we do, except it's
I
not
just
working.
want to make sure that it's clear that this is the westbound traffic, turning left
About this
onto.
lane, and folks making a left onto North Street.
I know that's where I jockey, so.
Yeah.
So, to that end, a dedicated left-hand turn lane at that location would allow for folks to comfortably make that left turn. At the same time, we have what we refer to sometimes as sort of that slip lane, where you make a right off of North Street and head east on 3A. That slip lane we looked at, does it make sense to bring that lane into the full T, make them wait behind that person who might be making the left? And the answer to that is no. And the reason it is again, we begin to remodel these, and we're able to look at the effects of the queuing on North Street, and those effects began to do exactly that, began to put too many cars in line on North Street and didn't release the traffic efficiently. So we know that we need that slip lane to stay. But we also had to consider one other movement as part of the design, and that is the left-hand turn on Water Street. This is not a final product in terms of the item, but that left-hand turn on North Street, we looked at that as well, and everything that we're doing here is data-driven. So sort of intuitively, we might feel like, hey, that's not a safe movement, but we didn't see any accident history there, really, to speak of. The only one I think we did see was not a result of the left-hand turn lane over a 5-year period. So everything that you see here is based on a lot of that data. So with that left turn onto Water Street remaining, we begin to relieve some of the pressure on North Street. So that began to make sense, but it brought up another question or another problem. Well, if that's the case, when can they make that left-hand turn lane comfortably? So we're able to time the lights on 3A and possibly install some lights here on that slip lane that are a permissive protective light that allows you to possibly make that right-hand turn lane. And we've seen that. What that is that flashing left-hand turn yellow that we all see now with signals relatively over the last 5 or 10 years. And that allows you to make that turn, but when you see it flashing yellow, you know you have to yield or you have to be careful for the oncoming traffic. So it'd be a similar situation. The only thing that we might want to introduce in here is a periodic all red stop condition. And it doesn't have to be long, but what that will do is provide maybe just that 3 or 4 seconds of stopping everywhere, so that if you do want to make a left on Water Street, it won't affect the level of service at the intersection really, but it gives you just that little break that you need to be able to make that. So again, the left-hand turn lane on Water Street seems to make sense. The slip lane certainly makes sense. This provides the queuing that we need in order to hopefully stop the jockeying that Karen Johnson has been doing out there.
Among other things.
And in this location, I'll wrap this location up by saying this particular location is actually the main congestion point along the corridor. And when we began to look at the modeling and we began to look at what was going on along the entire corridor, those hot summer days where we saw a lot of traffic actually worked well during the pilot and those one-lane configurations. But this began to be the toughest location in terms of managing that traffic, only because of all the movements, and this is one of the higher traffic volume spots. So this is from my opinion, it's a pretty significant. I think the 3A task force opinion is a pretty significant improvement. So now we're on to the Rotary, and what we're doing there, and I'm going to say that there's a distinction, even though it looks the same. What we have today there is a Rotary. This is a modern roundabout. So they're both round. They both look very similar, but there is some sort of math and science that goes along with this. One, of course, being that these tend to be striped or pavement marked to help the motorist navigate the modern roundabout. The other thing that takes place here is there's calculations that take place with respect to deflection angles and when they enter the modern roundabout to help circulate traffic through it more efficiently. So this is an improvement. It's actually a reduction in size. So the green space that you see above the modern roundabout becomes available. It's still in the mass dot layout, but I say it becomes available in terms of its green space. The red line that you see along the top of the page is the state layout. And maybe that's something we can talk to the state about down the road. But we introduce a couple things. One is already there, which is the gas station that's located here already has access into the Rotary. One of the things that Judy and I did is we met with each and every business owner that would be affected by this project. And I think in general, it was not only helpful to know, what they were thinking, but I think it also informed the process, helped us figure out, how we can better serve them. So this is something that they were looking for. We feel pretty comfortable that it's going to make them feel okay about their internal traffic patterns, while also introducing a safer environment. So. The other thing we considered is the impacts of that left-hand turn into the Hingham Maritime Center. And so it's hard to see here, but this proposal seeks to introduce a left-hand turn with some type of queuing at this location along the center of the road, so that if somebody's headed to that location, they've got a place to sort of wait and make that left when it feels comfortable. The other idea is that they'll be coming out of the lane reduction. So it's tough enough to make this left-hand turn with 2 cars coming by, but now hopefully you're going to be able to navigate that with just 1 vehicle coming by. So that becomes a lot less hairy. And generally, we hope that if you're approaching what will be a modern roundabout, your travel speeds coming down the hill should reflect one that demonstrates that you're entering into a different sort of geometric configuration. So when we combine those two things, we think that we're offering up a better solution that introduces some safety.
So Roger, will you just say that again? It's not a real lane, but there's just some space to wait to take a left there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what we would do is this would actually be striped, similar to what we had on North Street.
Yep.
With some available stacking or queuing.
Okay.
Prior slide showed it better. Right.
Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got it,
There's a little white arrow.
You kind of see it there.
Yeah, okay.
It's a little better.
Okay,
So
thank
you
you.
can still see that if you're coming out of the, at that point, you're sort of out of the way. And if you're coming out of the modern roundabout, that won't impact your flow.
Okay.
So it's one lane on the diet side, two lanes, and four going down there?
4 coming through
Yeah.
and headed into the dike, and then we have a transition or taper that then tapers the drivers, and we'll talk about that in a moment a little bit, but then tapers the drivers down to 1 lane. And the same thing as you come down the hill, except it's reverse. And so why 2 lanes and why not 1 lane? Well, one of the aspects of this modern roundabout that you have to look at is volume capacity. So if we were to reduce this to 1 lane, a couple things happen. One is it becomes very safe. If you look at Federal Highways research, a single lane roundabout is safer than any traffic light or intersection. But unfortunately, this location has such a high volume of traffic that reducing this roundabout to 1 lane would not accommodate that traffic flow. So it has to stay 2 lanes. So we look at this section, but just to restate as we come out of the modern roundabout, we have a taper length. That taper length is part of, falls into a design criteria, meaning what MassDOT will look at, or what MUDCAD says, the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and what Federal Highway says, they tell you if you're traveling at this speed, and on this type of road, that taper length has to be X amount of feet long. And if it's a construction project, it's a little different. So these are predetermined based on that. So similar configuration there. We continue with a multi-use path, a green shoulder, green space. Let me get to the right page here. And a 5-foot buffer and a little over 5-foot shoulder, 11-foot lane. And here we begin to want to introduce along this project is an island. Right now we're showing that it's sloped granite, but that's still up for discussion. And the idea behind having this lane a little wider is to do a couple of things. That's not the way it will be striped. We will do a couple of things. One is to provide that feeling of safety to the pedestrian, the bicyclists that are on the sidewalk. But 2, to provide a location for emergency vehicles and distressed vehicles, so that if you're driving along and you have a flat tire, you have room to pull over to the side of the road, and you can work on your car, and traffic can call AAA, and traffic can continue to flow. Likewise, if you're driving down the road and the fire truck pulls behind you, there's room there to pull over to the shoulder and get by. That doesn't exist right now, and I think that's important to say. So right now, the limits of the road, the full 4 lanes, are occupied by vehicles. So if you're traveling down that roadway and you're a fire truck and you have to get by, you have to maneuver between the existing traffic. And I think that's an important distinction. This doesn't make it worse, and this makes it better, and that's just not our opinion. That's what we've heard from our public safety folks. So it's really an opportunity for these folks to get out of the way, just get out of the way of those emergency vehicles. The island itself, and it continues through, we'll see the rest of the project in a moment, but the island itself does something else. Not so much at this location, but as we begin to get into these curves, a vertical island prevents folks from driving onto oncoming traffic. So if you've driven that road, like we all have, and you're on the inside lane, the lane closest to the middle of the road, and there's oncoming traffic, you really feel that closeness. And what we found, again, based on the data, is that the accidents, the most severe accidents that have taken place, are a result of folks driving over the double yellow. And if you're doing 40 miles an hour, in this case 30, maybe even 35 miles an hour, someone else is heading in the opposite direction doing the same speed, that's a pretty bad situation. And now you can begin to see why 30 or 40% of those folks end up taking an ambulance trip. They really have no chance. So what this island will do is if you're texting, hopefully, again, because of being a vertical island, if you're texting, or if you're not paying attention, or you're not a very good driver, and you make a mistake, and you run up against the median, you're going to damage your rim, you're going to blow a tire, you're going to be upset, but you're not going to kill somebody. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. So, critical part of the project, I think the island, because of what we've seen for the type, because of what we know based on the data and the types of accidents. We can also do something else with the islands, and once we get to that, is we can introduce elements in the islands that begin to create what's referred to sometimes as friction. What slows people down is an uncomfortable feeling driving. So if you've driven on the highway, not paying attention, sometimes you'll hit those rumble strips, brrr, you know, you feel that vibration of your car. That's intended to make you feel uncomfortable. It's meant to make you feel a little weird. There are other elements that, well, let's even use the example of the delineators on 3A. When we had those delineators, those were a full 12 feet wide. Those were wider than the lanes that were there on 3A now. Some of those lanes were just over 9 feet, but it still made you feel uncomfortable because you had these vertical structures. So we can introduce some of those vertical structures along the project potentially, and make you feel like you're in a narrower road by doing a couple of things. We can certainly stripe the pavement so that you can see that. The other thing we can do is maybe introduce some vertical features in the island themselves, whether it's plantings, trees, bushes, or anything that makes you feel a little uncomfortable when you're driving in excessive speeds. So this is, again, a continuation of that island, and everything basically stays the same. We do introduce openings, for example, at Button Cove, Steamboat. If you live one of those sites where you'll be able to get across, all the neighbors, and almost 100% of them have felt that the ability to cross that lane with one lane of traffic approaching you is much easier than with two cars coming at you. So just about unanimously, it's been really well received by all the neighbors. So that condition exists everywhere else where we have these openings at the adjoining roadways. The discussion has come up with respect, well, what about at the driveways? So we're going to try to find a balance between the two, but the more conflict points we introduce into the project, the more dangerous we're going to make it. So we don't want to get to a point where every driveway has an opening. We do provide, for example, here at Martin's Lane and Summer Street, a location where they can turn around. So we're going to still work on that, see what that balance point is, but we certainly don't want to have additional conflicting points along the entire driveway. I'm sorry, the entire corridor. So with that, we're at Martin's Lane now on Summer Street. And when we think about traffic flow, you know, intuitively we say one lane of traffic versus two lanes of traffic in each direction. Roger, how do you handle, it's impossible, it can't handle the same traffic volumes. It's going to cause backup. Well, two things. Well, obviously, we did the pilot that demonstrated it can work. And number two, this is the location where you have to, these nodes is where you consider whether or not you can accommodate those high volumes of traffic. So by adding the dedicated left-hand turn lanes and two lanes as you cross that intersection, allows for additional queuing. So you don't have that platoon effect where you have to wait for the person in front of you to move along. You're able to all get to the front of the line, so to speak, and when that light turns green, you're able to release a larger volume of traffic. If you can make the intersections work, the rest of the corridor in a single lane approach works. So there's been a lot of discussion about, so from Martin's Lane headed down the hill towards the proposed roundabout, coming through Martin's Lane, two lanes, transition down to one lane down the hill. As we come up the hill towards Muzzie's Corner or towards George Washington Boulevard, there's been a lot of discussion about what that needs to look like. We received a number of comments, emails, I think almost 100. We really listened to folks in terms of what they wanted to see at these locations, or what the issues were, what they felt. And one of the main questions we received is, geez, why, I get it in that other section, why in this section? So there was some of that. But we saw sort of a blend of that. It wasn't just, you know, I wouldn't say it was nowhere near a majority, but there's a couple of questions about that. But we also, in our interactions with Hull, they felt pretty strongly that this location should probably remain 2 lanes in each direction. On these projects, you know, it's important for us to have support from all our neighboring communities as we go through that TIP process that I described earlier. And we met with the 3A task force and we discussed this extensively. And I think that this is one of the concessions that the group was able to make, with the understanding that there wasn't going to be any compromise to safety. So if this wasn't going to work, and from a safety standpoint, then it's a non-starter. But the thought process is that with the island in place, and after working with our consultant, our office, the state, their consultant, everybody's got pencils and rules. So a lot of people looking at this particular project, they all feel that this will still satisfy the ultimate goal, which is making it an overall better corridor. And this doesn't change very much, but this is the intersection of Rockland Street and George Washington Boulevard. The biggest change, of course, will be all new traffic lights, all new ped accommodations, and at some point a connection between the existing sidewalk that continues up past the courthouse with the proposed one in this particular project. So hopefully that wasn't too long, but that's it.
Thank you.
All right.
At the outset, I'd like to thank you for the hard work that you've done on this.
Thank you, Mr. Healy.
It really has been a pleasure to work with you on this project, and it goes without saying, my colleagues that I had the pleasure to serve with, Judy Sneath, Deirdre, Alan Peralt, Bryce Blair, yours truly. And I'd like to thank the police and fire, Chief Olson and Chief Murphy, worked really hard with their counterparts in the town of Hull and Cohasset, kind of worked through some of the appropriate concerns that the departments had. And from that effort came a greater communication ability, an evacuation plan that has been formalized. And, you know, I think what you've seen here is years of hard work that's gone into a 15 or 20-minute PowerPoint presentation. But all of these contemplated design improvements are in place for improving and enhancing safety, and reflects a great deal of work. We had a number of meetings. We had sub-meetings. Judy and I worked with Roger and Tom on the area by the Fruit Center and in front of Stars. You know, Alan, what did you have?
With Bryce, the area from Broad Cove to the bathing beach.
Okay, sure. And we had 4 public meetings with the town of Hull. I'd like to thank the town of Hull, if they're watching tonight, for their open-mindedness and willingness to work with us. You know, we did some public meetings, and they're very, very polite and respectful. I thought the discussions were spirited, but appropriate. So at this point, I defer to my colleague. Any questions you might have?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions, and I also wanted to thank the committee, the staff, and really you, Paul. You know, it's a busy job for all of us, but Paul really dug into this. I know you spent a lot of time on it, and I appreciate it. And I think from my perspective, I knew it was in good hands on the board. So this is really my you know, my first in-depth foray into the information. I did watch the meeting where the consultant reported out to you all, and I thought that was very helpful to get some perspective on the project. You know, by way of background, you know, my reaction to this is sometimes government gets a bad rap, and I feel like this is one of those projects where government actually worked. Deirdre Anderson, among other folks, really brought this strongly to the fore. Roy G. Russo came to town meeting and said, hey, this is a real safety issue for the town of Hingham and for the citizens and folks that travel back and forth on that roadway. And I think it wasn't, there was no easy fix to it. And so, I think you advanced the question, Deirdre, and, government sort of responded the way it needed to respond with a whole bunch of process. But I think you see tonight that that process worked with a whole lot of hard work and commitment by members of this community to address that concern. So I thank you, Deirdre, and all of you for this. My little nitty-gritty questions are, because I was going to have a few. So one question, Roger, is, going back to like the third or fourth page where we start at the lobster pound and we're moving along. I noticed there's sidewalk on both sides of the street. I certainly get the sort of large 10-foot section where we're accommodating both bike and pedestrian traffic. Is there existing sidewalk there? And I guess the general question is just, what's the utility of having sidewalk on both sides? Instead of driving pedestrian traffic to one side of this.
There is an existing sidewalk on the south side. It stops at Burdette Ave.
Yeah.
And,
Right, no.
So we did look at, and what we said was, well, we might be able to find room for 2 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road, just assuming that we can make that work from a right-of-way standpoint, a road width standpoint. And sidewalk would be right up against the drivers, if you will. Or we could make one really comfortable sidewalk that connects that Otis Hill neighborhood to the waterfront and ultimately to downtown area. So, with those two considerations, I think the 3A task force and I supported it, thought it'd be a better idea to make a sidewalk that would probably actually get used.
Right. So, but I guess maybe I'm looking at the drawing incorrectly. It looked to me like on the, like the third slide, the Otis Street 3A slide.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can't go back to that. It says, it shows the larger sidewalk and then it shows a 5-foot sidewalk. I'm looking at this, like the third or fourth slide in.
This one?
Right, so it starts at that point.
So I guess my question to you is, why do we need to have sidewalk on both sides, and why not drive pedestrian traffic all to one side of the roadway?
I think, again, one of the things we were trying to do, one thing we noted too as well, I should say, on this particular side, there's a bus stop.
Okay.
And the other thing is, everywhere we begin to exclude sidewalk requires a design exception with the state.
Okay.
Another thing I might add, Karen, is when we were looking at, Bryce and I particularly were looking at this section, is we want the pedestrian access to every neighborhood we touch to not be lessened. So this is Burdette, so if you're coming down from Lincoln Street or something,
Yep.
this might be the way to go. But
Yep.
then you at least can get to the traffic light at the new improved pedestrian
Yep.
light at the
Okay.
Bailey Beach to cross.
You're not
So-
stuck. Yeah.
You're not stuck.
Okay.
Because we wouldn't have a crossing like the Burdette. Again, not a lot of people, but if you do it, it would be an improved situation.
Okay. And Roger, you were saying at the Bathing Beach parking lot, in addition to the lights that work now for cars, there'd be a signal there for pedestrian crossing. Okay. And I think you did a nice job, I think, kind of explaining. I know a lot of this, every segment of this, as you're pointing out, is sort of complex in its own way. But the Stars Fruit Center, like that little section of roadway, has a lot of activity going on. And you anticipated the question I was going to ask, which was that left-hand turn onto Water Street and how that change in having a left-hand turn signal up on North Street, I'm wondering, I was wondering, well, gee, would it then force more traffic up? Because if I know I can take the left at a light, maybe I'm going up there to take the left. But you're suggesting there may be some other traffic points that would continue to allow the natural flow of traffic left on Water Street?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then The roundabout is interesting. There was something in the Globe, I don't know whether you saw it, maybe over the weekend or something, that talked about roundabouts and rotaries. You know, one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm going to read this right after the comics.
Not before?
I saw it. I wanted to give it the proper attention.
Okay.
Did you talk to anybody in Situate about how their roundabout is working?
We've heard a lot of anecdotal stuff,
Just different?
but other than that, no.
Okay. And then on that slide, the roundabout slide, you mentioned this red line as being the state layout. Could you just tell me what that means? Because it's different than, it's where the state right-of-way is? So there's no taking or anything like that involved? We've got plenty of room to do this project?
We do, so we don't anticipate any taking along the corridor. The only section that we might require, or likely, I should say, require a taking is as we begin to get up towards the end of the project where we open up the 4 lanes.
Yep.
On the north side, or the top of your page, we begin to cross over that red line, and that property is held by the Town of Hingham Conservation Commission, we believe. At least that's what we've been able to pull up from the GIS. And I think, I'm speaking to Mr. Healy, I think at some point we need to talk to Mrs. Murphy about what that process would entail. I could tell you that conventionally, when MassDOT's dealing with land takings, they deal with it.
That's what I was
Everything's taken
gonna
pro
ask.
tanto. It's really an easy lift for me.
Okay.
But because that property might be held in trust, I'm not sure. We have to research that a little bit.
Okay. But it sounds like a taking by the state rather than a taking by the town.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've contacted real estate counsel on the issue.
Oh, okay.
And then I appreciated the discussion of the vertical island. I think that would, you know, again,
Yes.
not being an engineer, it makes a lot of sense to me. One other question is just, and people that live off this roadway, don't get mad, I'm just asking the question, and that is, why not just right turn only out of the roads that abut the roadway?
I think at some point we begin to balance sort of the volumes of traffic and how many people would have to go up and around and what that might look like. So I don't know that there's a potentially, there's a traffic engineering answer, other than it's an additional inconvenience for those particular folks that live on that road, and it takes away another turning opportunity for those who might not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one anecdotal thing with the record.
Sure.
The people who live off those roads said they've never seen more courtesy letting them take a left, because there's one lane. So if you're pulling out, you're the one person who's stopping that person from turning left. When there's two, and it's me or the other guy, right? And people said between crossing at that spot with pedestrians and taking a left, and some of the lefts were limited candidates, but the idea that there was much more courtesy because of the fact that there was less conflict with.
Yeah,
So
okay,
that came from a number of people.
They're really happy with that.
okay. And we've already potentially have folks that are gonna be somewhat inconvenienced by their driveways, sort of abutting the project too.
Great, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, you know, the thing I guess I'm interested in, how the engineers, you know, figure it out is, you know, whether you taper to one lane before the Martin's lane light or after the Martin's lane light if you're heading down to the rotary. And it sounds like the way this is designed, you would taper after the light.
Right.
You know, again, there's a lot going on at that light. You've got the left turn lane there already. And then you have two lanes they're going straight ahead. And so in high volume situations, again, the jockeying, which I'm really good at, you know, potentially comes into play there. And I guess, you know, I leave it to the professionals with the pencils to figure out whether that makes sense before or after that intersection. You know, my gut reaction was, gee, I would rather be in line in one lane at the light. Either that, or it strikes me that there needs to be a, you know, fairly significant taper lane depending on the volume at that light. But anyway.
Well, no, that's a good question. I think that one of the things we're going to, those taper lengths, as I said, some of those are predetermined based on MassDOT design manual. However, it was brought up at some of our meetings. One of the things we'll want to look at, where we might want to look at a potential design exception, is it's based on speed, but we also have to consider line of sight.
You get a hill, right.
And so it's not until you get, well past the light, and I say, well, not 50 feet, but, a little
Yeah,
past the light where you begin to see a taper. So do we begin to consider that taper at that point going forward? And I think that's one more thing that we need to flesh out a little better. Maybe,
Okay.
like you said, maybe it needs to be extended just a bit.
Okay. And then cost to the town to advance to the next stage, do we have a sense of that?
We do.
Yes, go ahead.
Am I doing right? Or do you
You're
wanna
doing
go?
so well. Keep
You
going.
want me to go?
Yeah, so
Okay,
this was
yeah.
our next point, which is
Yeah.
we do need to go to town meeting
Okay.
with a warrant article for the cost to get to the 25%
Yeah.
design,
Yeah.
to submit to the state and take it away.
So we did speak to our consultant, and by the way, this was anticipated at the initial
Right.
sort of request. We knew that this was going to get us to a certain point. In addition to that, we introduced a pilot, which is the first time any of us have done any of this, whether it's anybody I've worked with at MassDOT or any of the consultants. So and they want to apply this actually in other locations. They're
Yeah,
so
really,
happy with
it
the
was
way it
really
went.
interesting.
So we're trendsetters. In any case, so with those added sort of, requirements for the pilot and everything, we had to do research that and the installation of the delineators. We have a shortfall of about $165,000 to get this to the finish line. Plus, if we get if the project gets constructive funding, there's a construction management period that's it'll be less than this, but we would carry a $10,000 budget for that, so $175,000. And it's a lot of money, but I think the takeaway from this, similar to Derby Street or 228 or Gardner Street intersection, at the end, the hope is that we're going to get $7 million, $8 million worth of road work that gets picked up by the state. So we've had a lot. MassDOT has focused on this particular location quite a bit. We've had the CTPS study, and they've told me they would like nothing better than to advance projects that they've studied instead of it just being shelved. So I think we have
some
quite a bit of
momentum
momentum behind this project. In addition to that, we met with neighbors just beyond the project along George Washington Boulevard. And as happens on a lot of our projects, they ask you to extend the project, include us. They live in that stretch between the courthouse and the end of this project. So Judy and I met with them. We empathize with their concerns, and we suggested to them that maybe there might be an opportunity for them to talk to the selectmen, talk to the advisory group, and see if there's maybe a much smaller dollar amount that maybe might put this project, that section, in some type of queue, and go through a process very similar to what we've gone through with this particular project, but not connected to this project.
Right.
Separate,
Right,
sort
right.
of, on their
Yep.
own, yeah.
Right. I understand both points. So you're asking for a vote tonight. Can we vote without this money, or?
We can.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would seek these funds just through the conventional funding process.
Okay.
So we have enough money in the budget now to continue, move it along, and hopefully in April, this additional fusion will get us through over the finish line.
But our plan was to meet again as a group in November to agree on the amount for the warrant article as a group and submit it by the December 1st
Okay,
deadline. So we weren't hoping for a vote on that amount
thank you.
tonight.
All set, thank you.
Audience, questions, comments? Yes, James? Less is more.
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street. I'm just wondering about the people with driveways like Barnes Lane coming out, and I know it was discussed before, but would it be possible to have the median at that point a very narrow section, 1 car width, with tapered curbs so that a person could cross it and not have to go in the wrong direction for some distance? I mean, you could only do that slowly, but if there was a taper, you'd still have visually the median, and yet maybe could cross there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Do you want to handle that, or you?
Yeah, well, it's the plan. I think it's what we plan on doing. So, yes, we can do that. That's the goal. Yep.
You need, the object of the whole exercise is to make the roads safer. And that's, yes, Carol? No, go ahead.
We're glad you're back, though. We knew you'd miss us.
Carol Meyer, freelancing for the Hingham Journal. I just want to be sure that I got clear the part about the stretch that will be in concession to Hull, the stretch that would be 2 lanes instead of 1. Was that between George Washington Boulevard and where?
It'd be at the top of Old Colony Hill, but it's
Martin's,
not...
with the intersection?
Yeah, at the top of
Okay.
Martin's Lane.
Okay.
It's not so much of a concession, it's the town's desire to work cooperatively with its fellow town. And, you know, we work very cooperatively with Mr. Lemnios and the selectmen there, and police and fire. Same with respect to the town of Cohasset, too. This has been a cooperative effort that's been going on for over a year. So it's kind of a lot of brain power going into this design that has been presented tonight.
Roger, you said, so I'm sure, so you said that you would do this as a cooperative effort as long as safety wasn't compromised. So has that been determined that it won't be compromised? Or
Yeah,
will that be, it's already been
Yeah,
determined?
I think that we've talked about it extensively. I think
Okay.
that the 3A task force, certainly the people sitting in front of you would not, that would be a game stopper for all of us, yeah.
We're unanimous in what was presented to you tonight, and I think it's important for the public to know that no matter what's submitted, the state has its own engineering team. They've peer-reviewed this as well with a very reputable engineering firm. So this will continue to go through the review process to craft the ultimate design result.
Okay. And the 175, is that the potential amount for town meeting to get, to what point was that?
Complete 100%.
To the 100% design plan? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's also worth noting that we've had unanimous support from each of the 6 public safety divisions across the 3 towns that were affected. Police and fire in all 3, Cohasset, Hull, and obviously in Hingham.
Yeah, I'd like to single out Glenn Olson and Steve Murphy for that effort, because I think that their hard work has really turned that, because there was some skepticism initially. So,
I echo that. They really took the initiative to set up these meetings with the other towns and to really work through a lot of hard details and to make sure that it worked. So,
there's
thank
been
you.
a lot of effort on this. All right, let's do a motion,
Okay.
I think.
I made a few little notes on my motion, so let me try this one out on you. I move that we advance the 25% design phase of the Route 3A safety improvements to the Mass Department of Transportation.
I'll second that. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice
Thank
to-
you.
Well done. Thank
Thanks
you
so
so
much.
much. It was anticlimactic.
I know, man. There's a lot of work.
Always is.
Thank you.
Okay. And next on the agenda is the Green Communities Fuel Efficient Vehicle Policy and Energy Reduction Plan. And who do we have?
So tonight, we're going to talk about 2 components of the Green Communities program that require adoption by the Board of Selectmen of the town, so that the town is able to move forward and become designated as a green community. These are the fuel efficient vehicle policy and the draft energy reduction plan. And because the town's Energy Action Committee has done so much work to move this project forward, Brad Moyer is here to give an overview of the program. I'd like to thank Brad and the whole committee, as well as Seth Pickering from the state, Colin Samir from the light plant, Nicole Sanchez from MAPC, the folks at Energy Source who conducted all of the energy audits of town facilities at no cost to the town, John Parrish from the school department, and all of the other departments that helped us compile data and facilitate these audits over the past few weeks. This has truly been a team effort.
Great. Well, thank you, Michelle. As Michelle indicated, my name is Brad Moyer. I'm chair of the Energy Action Committee. I'd also like to thank Seth Pickering of the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources for joining us here, and who's been an old hat at this point at these meetings, as well as Nicole Sanchez with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, whose organization had provided a technical grant to assist us for free in getting to this point. I also like to thank town administration, Tom, and my new best friend, Michelle, who in my view has been an excellent addition to this town.
She's my best friend.
What? Yeah, Michelle. Oh, we were best friends.
So thank you for welcoming us back. Here we are at the finish line. There's been quite a bit of work over the past 2 years, which I will summarize very briefly. Just as a reminder for the audience members and who may be watching, that the Green Communities Program is a state program sponsored by the Department of Energy Resources, which makes available grants for energy reduction measures to various municipalities who meet the criteria to join the program. There are 5 criteria. The town meets the first and second criteria already through zoning regulations and promise to submit answers to plans addressed to those regulations for bringing renewable energy to the town within a 1-year period. We also, through town meeting, adopted another criteria when we moved for the stretch code, which is the 5th criterion. And here we are tonight to address criteria 3 and 4, the energy reduction plan and baseline, and the fuel efficient vehicle policy. Why are we doing this? I guess if I could give a one-word answer, it would be money. Because by joining this program, we are eligible for grants from the state that we can use towards energy efficiency measures. By being designated as part of the program, we'll get an initial grant that is based on a state formula. We estimate that to be approximately $150,000, give or take. After that initial grant, every year thereafter, the town is eligible to submit competitive grants for additional projects to work on energy conservation and reduction measures. So it's a great benefit to the town. I'd also like to add that we are a municipal light town, and so though nominally not eligible for this program, because Hingham does serve a few investor-owned utility customers, we are automatically eligible to join the program, which is a great addition the Green Communities Program made several years ago. And so we do not pay an additional surcharge on our bills nominally that investor-owned utility customers do, and yet we can get the benefit of the program. So it's really, truly a win-win for us. So we're here tonight for the criteria 3 and 4, and we're at the finish line, as I indicated earlier, because the deadline for submitting our application is October 26th this month. So our ask tonight is to adopt the fuel-efficient vehicle policy, which is quite straightforward, actually. The fuel-efficient vehicle policy requires that as we add new vehicles or replace existing vehicles, that they meet minimum fuel criteria standards. However, there are quite a few exemptions in that policy. Through the work of town administration and the committee, as well as Seth and Nicole, we've analyzed our vehicle inventory and have determined that all vehicles that would not be exempt that the town currently owns, if we were to replace them at their end of life with the same model, although the newest model available, or even a year or so ago available, that we would automatically meet the fuel-efficient vehicle requirements under the policy. So there's really no impact to us in moving forward on this policy. For the energy reduction plan, the word I'd like to emphasize there is plan and not promise. This is not an obligation. By adopting this plan, it is essentially the town saying, we recognize that we have, under the program, a goal to reduce our energy usage by 20% after a 5-year period. And what is in that plan is our best guess at what we can do at this time to meet that goal. I promise you that it will change. There is not a town that has not had changes to their 5-year plans. because 5 years is a pretty long time. If you think about where LED lighting prices were 5 years ago versus where they are now, I guarantee you those 5-year plans 5 years ago, did not include a lot of money towards LED lighting, and yet they'd be foolish not to have taken advantage of that with the price decreases in the past 5 years. So the plan that you see in front of you is a draft plan, and it is still being worked on. We've been furiously finishing up the energy audits that Energy Source has provided for the town free of charge for all of the municipal buildings and the school buildings. That data is largely made available now, but we're still bringing in some last-minute reports and still processing that. So the plan will be much more fleshed out and complete before the October 26th deadline. It is just not substantially complete at this time. However, we have enough information where we believe quite credibly that we can meet the 20% reduction goal with the data that we do have. And we expect with the completion of that data to find even more. So we feel we're in a very good position with that energy reduction plan. Once the application goes in, we would find out whether or not we'd be designated in mid-December. And then if we are designated, we'll receive our grant funding early next year, at which point we will submit a proposal for how that money will be spent. That proposal will most likely come from one of the energy reduction measures we have in the plan, though it need not come from that. Should things substantially change in the next couple of months, we might find a better target. So like I said, it's a plan, not a promise. I'd also like to note that the school committee was also presented both the vehicle policy and the plan last night, and they adopted both unanimously. So I'm very pleased to report that and say I think we've got a lot of momentum and a lot of goodwill with this project, and I'm very excited that if we can bring it to the town. So with that, I'll pause and ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, I guess I had a technical question, and that is where this policy gets reflected. Does this become a Board of Selectmen policy, Tom or Michelle? Is that, so it's not a bylaw, right? It's just a policy?
No, it would likely be added to the selectmen's policies.
Okay. And so for the school committee, same thing? It's a school committee policy?
Yeah, so it's a plan, right? So this plan gets.
I guess I was looking at the fuel efficient vehicle policy first, but whatever.
Yes, yeah. So the fuel efficient vehicle policy would have to become a policy of the Board of Selectmen. It's appropriate to do so. I would point out that that policy is, it's not onerous, to say the least. If you look at the vehicles that are replacement vehicles for, they're off the replacement list. These are Ford F-150s, they're Chevy Silverados. They're not, Priuses and, stuffing our DPW guys into tiny little electric trucks. That's not what this does. It allows for appropriate equipment to be used. They just don't want you to go out and buy gas vessels for no reason. And so it's appropriate. That said, yes, it would be a policy.
Of the Board of Selectmen, and then a policy of the school
Yeah,
committee.
I don't know what DOT's, or what the school administration's policy books are, or how it would fall with them. I don't know if they brought it up at all, but.
They didn't bring it up at the meeting. I know the school committee adopted as their policy, but the administration of that will fall to John Ferris and the school facilities for their vehicle replacements.
Okay. And, we spent some time talking with you, last year-ish about the plan. So I have to say, sort of ordinarily, I wouldn't vote for something unless I knew that the i's were dotted and the t's were crossed in the draft that I have. But I think, I'd say two things. One, I think I've understood sort of where you were going with this from your earlier presentations to the board. And my assumption, Michelle, would be that if we approve this tonight, notwithstanding the fact that it's not complete, I would assume the concepts in here are substantially complete, so there'd be no material surprises if we approve this to move forward for submittal, right?
I don't think there'll be any material surprises. There's a few things missing, like Brad said, the weatherization audits are just finishing up, so there'll be some insulation measures added in there. Like he said, it's a living document and a plan that will change, but we have most of the information already from the auditors in summary form, and it's sort of just getting a little bit more of the nitty-gritty data, some of the tables filled out.
Okay. Okay. And then if we were to receive the grant funding, is that something that would be an account that the Board of Selectmen's office would oversee together with the Energy Action Committee would make recommendations as to the expenditure of those funds, or how does the grant money get deployed?
I mean, the contract that the town would be entering into would be between essentially the selectmen representing the town and the Green Communities program. So ultimately, what money or what proposals you put forward to expend those funds would be the purview of the selectmen and town administration at your delegation.
So I have a lot of experience with this. We were a green community in the community that came to prior to being here. And the way it works every year is, once you're designated, which is what this process is, this is the designation process, then you become eligible to submit applications for grant awards annually. Those annual grant submissions, in my experience, while this is a very helpful document in determining our general
Sort of overall,
concept
yeah.
overall, the plan moving forward every year in terms of energy reduction measures are most often taken off of current energy audits. So you're looking at your global picture of all of your buildings and the energy audits that were done on them, and then grabbing the most cost-effective, biggest bang for the buck projects and submitting them, project 1, project 2, project 3, and that's what the Green Communities program funds.
Okay.
So that when we get the check in the mail, so to speak, there's
for a
specific
particular-
quotes
Okay.
for the work that needs to be done for each of the projects.
I mean, if I could say, in my view, the most important thing of this plan is actually the energy baseline, figuring out how much energy we consumed in the most recent year, and then Seth, cover your ears perhaps for this, but the 20% reduction is just to present to the Green Communities program that we think there's a viable path to work
Get
to
to that
achieve that 20% reduction, whether or not the actual items in there are the items that we would select to go forward with. Because like I said, a year or two now, we may find other projects that we believe are more beneficial.
I just have a couple of comments. I'm glad to see that the police vehicles are exempt.
Yes.
Because quite frankly, I think, the experience that I recall was when 2.5 passed, the town tried to get by every other year and use 6-cylinder motors, and it was just a disaster. The cruisers were in the shop every other day, and it didn't seem to work. So I did find your presentation, the energy reduction plan, very interesting. I did not realize there were 2,300 streetlights in this town. This is a serious data gathering, and my compliments to you. And I'm happy to see that the town planner is contemplated to be actively involved in this as well. I think that's a great idea.
And I'd like those compliments go, I think, to Paul Haino and the light plant, who have done a phenomenal job of making that information available, as well as to Seth and Nicole and the town administration for bringing the energy audits in and going through all the hard work, pulling bills out of file cabinets and so forth, and making them available. They really deserve the credit on this one.
And I would imagine that this would have some kind of applicability to commercial development. I mean, if the applicant knows that the town has this posture, is there a greater likelihood that what's presented for our consideration would likewise be consistent with what's going on here?
So I'm sorry, when you say commercial development, I'm not quite sure I'm understanding your question.
Future building proposals.
Oh, right. So it's focused more on the municipal use.
Sure.
So But certainly, from a developer standpoint, I think it announced we've had in the past multiple conversations and opportunities for considering solar projects and other projects of that nature, as well as even welcoming businesses in the area who may be interested in renewable energy. And I think this designation and the work we've done kind of helps to say, yes, we're open for business in that regard and welcoming of that.
If I could just piggyback on that, my experience, again, in another community was, when you're designated as a green community, it's a badge of honor. And when businesses are coming in, and I actually saw this several times, they wanna, when they're coming to, before the permitting boards, they want to emulate the community that they're in. And they would, we had a couple of LEED certified building projects as a result of communities or businesses coming in to try to, again, emulate our leadership and by being a green community. So,
I seem to recall a couple of those buildings being permitted down the shipyard. Is there anybody who'd like to chime in, question, comment? I don't hear anybody. I'd just like to thank you all, and those of you in the audience that did all this work. I truly appreciate it. I had initially envisioned we were all going to be driving Priuses. Doesn't appear to be the case.
Well, these are actually the only ones with the Prius right now.
Gotta rub it in. That's the dare officer. I saw that.
I thought it was Glenn's car.
I want to know who's got the Acura. All right.
No, to your point, I mean, this is another project that has taken a lot of people a long time, you know, you chief among them, and, you know, I think we're on the road to set a community standard that we can be proud of, to Tom's point. So thank you, and thank the group for this contribution. We take a motion?
Please, if you would.
Motions?
Thank you.
I move that we adopt the energy reduction plan for criterion 3 of the Green Communities application for designation.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. I move that we adopt the fuel-efficient vehicle policy for criterion 4 of the Green Communities application for designation.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good job, Brett. Thank you. Okay. Next, reserve fund transfer request in the amount of $44,700 as it relates to demolition work at 58 Main Street. Anybody here for that?
Good evening.
Michael?
I have excuse me. Michael Clancy, Building Commissioner. I have a short presentation.
Okay.
I don't have any slides or anything like that. I do have a couple photographs if you
Words are good.
need to take a look at them. I attended the Historic District Commission meeting on October 16th, and I explained to them the history in the building department's files. The building department's files date back to April 23rd, 1982, some 36 years on 58 Main Street. The property has received 8 building permits, 5 on the home and 3 on the barn. The work was not completed and the building permits expired. The building department has received 10 complaints over the years. The Historic District Commission has sent the owner 14 letters dating back to April 4th, 1989. The owner has been served enforcement letters 9 times by a constable. The building department has sent the owner 30 enforcement letters regarding the unsafe structures from May 26, 1994 to July 26, 2018. The building department has sent the owner 53 letters along with citations on unregistered motor vehicles that are still on the property. There is one police report in the file. The building department has applied for and received 2 entry warrants from Brockton Housing Court because the owner refused to allow the building department on the property. The building department has conducted 3 board of surveys on the property. We have received 2 letters and 2 emails from the owner. He does not agree with the enforcement letters. There are 3 engineer reports in the files dating back to 1983 from the owner stating that the building can be repaired. The owner received a commitment letter on December 6th, 2013 from a financial institution for $250,000 to renovate the property. The building department has taken photographs over the years, which you may want to review. The building department is requesting approval from the Historic District Commission to remove the 2 unsafe structures on the property. At the August 16th, 2018 letter of the Historic District Commission, the Historic District Commission approved the demolition of the 2 structures by a unanimous vote. Mr. Pitts asked for a 30-day extension. However, the board commission denied his request. A letter was sent to Mr. Pitts on August 20th, 2018. Dear Mr. Pitts, regarding 58 Main Street, dangerous and unsafe structures. Dear Mr. Pitts, the following action and information is requested before a demolition or building permit is issued on the 2 structures at the above referenced property. The home and the accessory structure barn must be secured with a 6-foot fence installed around both structures within 7 days after the receipt of this letter. Mr. Pitts did install the fence approximately 10 days after the letter was written. As far as the accessory building and barn, a signed contract between you and a licensed demolition or building contractor to demolish the accessory structure barn with a start and completion date. I was asking him for that information. As far as the Thomas Baker home, I gave him 3 options. A signed contract between you and a licensed demolition contractor or a building contractor to demolish the home with a start and completion date. Second option, an engineer's report with a detailed plan to dismantle the home along with a signed contract between you and a licensed demolition or building contractor to demolish the home with a start and completion date. Also, an engineer's report with a detailed plan to rebuild, renovate the home along with a signed contract between you and a licensed contractor. You have 30 days to comply with, after the receipt of this letter, with the options on the Thomas Baker home. Should you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me in the building department. Signed by Michael Clancy. On this coming Saturday, it will be 60 days since the last August 20th letter went out to Mr. Pitts. I did receive an email from Mr. Pitts on September 20th, 2018, stating he had installed the fence but was unable to obtain an engineer's report. Mr. Pitts also came into the building department on October 5th, 2018 at approximately 12:45 p.m. He asked to apply for a demolition permit. I told him he would need a licensed contractor to do the work because the two structures are unsafe. Over this past weekend, someone was in the home, I don't know the exact date or time, I'm sure the police chief can speak on that, with a flashlight. The neighbor also called that somebody was outside the home in a car with it running sometime in the middle of the night. I don't know exactly. The chief might be able to comment on that further. I did receive a call from Peter Bickford, which is in the audience here tonight. That was day before yesterday. I did not talk to him until today. He asked what could be done with the home. I told him at this point, Peter, I don't think anything could be done with the home. Again, they're two unsafe structures. He asked if he could add a top and shore up the home. And again, I told him, Peter, at this point, I don't believe so. We have not received an engineer's report stating that the home can be fixed. We don't have a signed contract from a demolition contractor or a building contractor. I did tell Peter that if the owner would like to do a good faith thing to remove the two unregistered cars and get a permit to tear down the accessory structure in the back. Again, that was today. I'm sure Peter is here with the owner, and I might speak on that after I'm done. I do have a photograph here of July 4th, 2018, with several people on the property, including children. The two buildings are unsafe and must be demolished before someone gets hurt or killed. Pass the picture around. I'm here to ask for the funding to hire a contractor to demolish the two buildings. The deputy fire chief is here along with the police chief and town council. Are there any other questions that the board has?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, are there any houses in town other than this one that are in similar condition?
No.
Has there been any ability by the town or its agents to enter the property, to make an actual inspection within the building itself? Or is this all from a public way or an area where you have a right to be, but not on the
No, I
property?
have photographs from the outside of the building, through the doors and the windows. That's how the engineer that went on two separate occasions looked at both structures and designed.
Based
As
on
they were
those
unsafe.
observations, was the engineer able to form an opinion as to the stability of the building?
He stated that they are unsafe and they must be demolished, or should be demolished.
Have they been exposed to the elements for a prolonged period of time?
Approximately 36 years. We did have a board of survey done with the fire chief, a disinterested person, and an engineer, and all stated that the buildings should be demolished.
Has the owner of the property provided you with any kind of engineering report that indicates that the building is worth saving?
No, not at this point.
I'm all about second chances and sometimes third chances, but this is just, it's concerning to me. I feel like, and I think, Mr. Clancy, you do a nice job with this, of encouraging people to comply over time. Again, giving them some leeway to come to the table and follow the rules. The litany of those very opportunities that you described to us, again, seem like we've been encouraging the owner for a long time to take care of what's now become quite a dire property. You and I spoke earlier today, and it seems like one of the things that we've been concerned about has happened, and could have happened other times that we don't know about, and that is, the potential for our fire and safety personnel to have to respond in an unsafe location to an emergency or a trespass or fire. I'm really, really concerned about that. I'm concerned about citizen safety in those structures. It strikes me that it's an attractive nuisance, and it has the potential of putting our folks in harm's way, I feel like. I did watch the Historic Districts Commission hearing, and I appreciate the follow-up here, the letter that you wrote to Hans Vonderleft, who's the chair of the Historic Districts Commission, dated 10/20/2016. And at that time, it seemed like there was an independent group, or an independent engineer, along with Bob Olson, who was then the fire chief, indicating that the 3 Board of Survey members indicated that the home, accessory structure, and automobiles must be removed from the property for the public safety. The structure would be especially unsafe in the case of building fire. I mean, that was 2016, and here we are today. It would help me, Council, if you could take me through the Mass General Law requirements on unsafe structures. I'm not familiar with that.
Sure. So it's Chapter 143. So I've been working with Mike over the last probably 6 months or so, at least on this. He's been at it a lot longer than I have. But Chapter 143 has procedural steps that Mike has followed along the way. Notice to the owner, Board of Survey, administrative search warrant to get on the property. So Mike has followed all of those steps. So at this point, the town's in a position to go forward with demolition if it chooses to. What happens is, if the demolition goes forward, the town is able to put a lien on the property and then recover those funds. That lien over time becomes a real estate tax lien. It gets reported to the assessor's office and then can be collected in the same manner as real estate taxes. So long-term, the town puts out the money first, but then the town can recover the funds back in the future.
And is there any exposure to the town in taking action under Chapter 143?
I don't see any in this case. I think we followed all of the procedural rules. I think the Board of Survey reports were clear. I think we've been to housing court twice on this in front of judges to get the administrative search warrant and never had a problem. So I think we followed all of the rules. I think if we do a demolition, we'll put the lien on, and then we'll try to recover it.
Okay. And Mike, the one thing I wasn't clear about was your conversations today with Mr. Pitts or Mr. Bickford. Were you continuing to try to come to some different agreement with them? Where does that stand?
I was.
Okay.
Excuse me, I was. When I came to town almost 6 years ago, I came here because Hingham restores old buildings, and they keep them, and they always take care of them. And I'm just beside myself that this building has been left in this disarray for 36 years. And it's to the point now that, God forbid, somebody gets hurt or killed on that piece of property. And I did tell Peter today, because he came into the office and called me on the phone, that I'm still willing to work with the owner. However, something has to get done, or we're going to have to tear the buildings down. Right now, it's on a residential piece of property. The use in the barn and the home is abandoned. So for the owner to rebuild the barn in the back, he would have to reestablish the residential use in the home out front first. He could not rebuild the barn first without repairing the home or building a new home to establish the primary use for an accessory use to be built.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And just to be clear, in your August 20th letter, you set out very succinctly in bullet points some very concrete asks or requirements and a couple of options. And what I heard you say is, other than the fence being installed at some point, it was supposed to be installed within 7 days of the August 20th letter.
Correct.
And was that completed?
It was completed. It wasn't within 7 days. I think it was 10 days.
Okay. Has anything else been completed on that list?
No, not to date.
Hey, can we just stop for a second? Bob, we're getting a lot of feedback out here, like the whole meeting. It's really, what? Okay. Maybe if we just sit quietly, we'll be all set. I don't know. Okay.
Deputies, if the house goes, are you just going to drive down and watch it go and make sure the other houses don't burn to either side?
Yep.
What's the position of the fire department here?
The main problem is fire with this building and the two exposures on the left and right side of the building. This building is unique because of the close exposures. You're talking only, let's see, 20, 25 feet of distance between the 58 main and the building to the left and right. So
Very tight in a fire.
yeah, it's a bad situation. Let's see. Yeah, 30 years ago, there was a big fire in Hingham Square. That's another concern. This building is at the start of Hingham Square. You know, God forbid this a fire started on a windy night or during, you know, a nor'easter or something like that. It could just blow right down the street.
Towards the newly renovated
Old
museum
Derby.
at Old
Yeah,
Derby?
Exactly. Yeah, and those, you know, as you know, fire goes, you know, heat and fire go up, and Old Derby is up of the 58 Main Street. Yeah, so it's a real concern for us. The other issue, if somebody, God forbid, trespasses there, we're going to have to go in and get them. To the right of 58 Main Street is a group home. I'm not sure. I think there's maybe 6 people living in there. And, you know, it's really unfair to anybody living this close to 58 Main Street. But the fire department's main concern is an exposure issue on the left and right side. And right across the street is the Lauren Hall movie theater. You know, pretty much all wooden structures downtown Hingham. Yeah, and I did view the property with Mike Clancy. We did peek in through the doors and the windows, and in my opinion, both structures are unsafe. I started on the fire department 30 years ago, and I was warned by the training officer at the time, Captain Peasley, to stay the heck out of that building. And
So your opinion's based on your training background and experience as a firefighter in the town of Hingham?
absolutely, yeah.
Chief, is there anything else you'd like to add? Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
Good evening, Glenn Olson, Hingham Police. I have some major concerns with this, and I think the town has, not everybody in the town has identified this as a common nuisance where we feel that it's a dangerous situation. There was an incident where the doors were broken open. Recently, after receiving some emails I saw the other day, one of the neighbors reported seeing flashlights and movement around inside the house at about 2:30 in the morning. I sent an officer down last night to interview her and get some more information. We currently have it on a patrol request. My concern is that, first of all, abandoned buildings like this are just a common nuisance, so it's just going to attract kids to go there. It continues to be in disrepair. Vehicles were there. I just see this as a problem with the youth in the area. And currently, right now, my concerns are beginning to believe that as we're getting into the colder weather, you know, there are people out there that are looking for places to stay, people that need shelter.
Homeless.
Homeless people that need shelter, and they're looking for places to stay. And you know, they sometimes are very smart at the way they do this, so they were able to get around fences and get into a back entrance. And I know we recently had Hobart Street burn. I know for many years that's been a similar type property that the town has worked on, and I find it very frustrating as a police chief when we try to prevent accidents from happening and you try to work with people. And the history of this unit has been, I thought this was resolved two and a half years ago, sitting in front of the boards. And it's, you know, every year I do the 4th of July parade, I keep on wondering, like, when is this going to be taken care of? It just seems to be one promise after another, and I just think that every time we just let this go on, we're just continuing to increase our liability of someone being hurt there, and then going after the town or the different department heads for not doing anything about this. So I would urge you to do something and take action against this, because it is a public safety issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Pitts here?
Yes, I am.
Say anything, sir? Just identify yourself. Would you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, my name is John Pitts. I'm the owner of the house. First of all,
Where do you live?
I have a home in Vermont. I have a place down the Cape. So
Well, it says 11 Harborview Avenue.
I do not
North
live there. And I don't know where they've been serving the papers, but I have not received any. And as far as Mr. Clancy says he has received no engineer reports, he received one last month when we were at the meeting. That's the second one. We had one done in 2016. So I have a copy of the last one if you want to read it.
Where can the town provide you with notice, sir?
I have a P.O. box. My tax bill, excise tax, things like that go there. I don't know whether, you know, I haven't been getting any tax bills. I come down, I ask them what is owed, and I just write out a check. Here's, if you'd like to pass around. That's the most current. Mr. Clancy has a copy of that.
All right.
And we had a long one.
Can we make a copy of this?
Certainly, yeah.
This is an August 16, 2018 letter from a Walter A. McKenna Associates,
Oh,
Inc.,
what year is that?
2018.
Okay.
I'll read it because it's brief. To whom it may concern, this letter is in regards to the inspection and report that was conducted and issued by this office in December 2016. As of today, our recommendation and assessment stated in the report still holds true. The structure is capable of withstanding a proper rehabilitation to bring it to a safe and sound condition. Again, our main recommendation is that until such time it is properly braced and protected to ensure safety. And then it's signed by a Michael K. Schilling,
Structural engineer.
It's stamped, and it indicates that he's a professional engineer. Have you
And
seen
that was,
that, Mr.
that was
Clancy?
given to Mr. Clancy at the meeting when we were at the Historic Society meeting, and there's a long form that we have of that same letter with, contains 3 pages of recommendations and what has to be done. As far as the engineers who looked at it, they were hired by the town. They're definitely going to go along with the building inspector. They're going to say whatever he wants. They want to get paid. They're not going to oppose what he's saying. But my engineer, and Peter Bickford is here, he's worked on buildings. You can ask him if it can be saved. The building is a strong building. It's held up since 1757. I was working on it. The Historic Society came into power in 87, and from that point on, they made it very difficult. I wanted to put covers on it. They said, I have the letter stating no tops could be put on it. Things got wet, beams got damaged. I put up a fence. I was asked to put up a fence. We put up a fence. As far as the lights, I go down there probably once a week at nighttime. I check it out. That was probably me down there. I was out in the backyard. I was walking around with a flashlight. I go down there quite often. And all I know is Mr. Clancy, I think, would like to see the buildings all torn down so he can laugh and say, guess what, you can't build on it.
Now, wait a minute. Don't attack the building commissioner. State your point.
I'm not attacking anyone, just stating facts.
You're not stating facts, you're stating an opinion.
No, people have come to me and
Mr.
they
Clancy's
say...
doing his job.
Yeah, well, he's doing his job, but I think he's making up things that he's going along. He's also doing his job by coming in here telling you that he didn't receive an engineer's report.
I don't consider that an engineer's report, with all due respect.
Well, I have the real one, and he received the one...
That's what you handed me.
That's, the one I have, the long form is right downstairs. I'll be glad to get it, and it was done in 2016. I was given information from Andrea that things had to be done. I went over, I had everything approved. She said, go over, I'll walk you across the hall. In 2000, I believe it was 2016, December, I was turned down. By state law, I should have been able to get a permit to work on your house. If it's your own house or a home you intend to live in, you can get a permit. Maybe if it's a 3-family, you can't, but this is a single-family home. I was prepared to work on it. I was denied it, and I bought stuff. I have the receipts. If I was able to have done the repairs then, we wouldn't be here tonight. I would have made the repairs. They wanted the place closed in, doors attached, and it would have been done. I was denied the permit, and that's why this is elevated to where it is now. I wanted to work on it. I've been prevented to work on it. I had permits. Every time we're ready to do something, they say, oh, it's gone past 6 months. You've got to come before us again. Sometimes it takes 6 months. And another false story he told you, I borrowed $250,000 to do work on it. I'll tell you, he should be working for Disney World, making up stories.
You know what,
because,
Mr. Pitts,
I borrowed the money to fix up another building.
You have the right to speak, but not to attack.
I'm not attacking, but he's attacking
You
me
are.
by saying I borrowed $250,000
He's
to
reciting
work
the
on it.
facts.
Well, I didn't work on the house because that money was never earmarked for it. It was for another property I owned. And it was just secured with that property and another one to get it. They just had a secure on the loan.
You don't remember me, do you?
Yes, I do. I remember when I bought the house. You came up and we had just bought it. You had red hair then.
I did.
And I remember you coming up, and I had just bought the place, and I remember being inside with 3 or 4 friends, and they were all excited. I just bought the house. They wanted to see it. You said, you didn't buy the house. You said, show me your keys and put it in the door and turn the key, and if it works, I'll believe you. And I did. And then I also remember you saying, wow.
You gave me a tour, didn't you?
I think I did, yeah.
You did.
And I also remember what you said. You said, this is going to be a great place, and I bet you're going to have some great parties here, and I expect to be invited one way or the other.
I don't have that memory.
I do, but I do remember you.
I don't have that memory.
I thought that was pretty funny. You said,
But I
one
got
way
to
or the
tell
other,
you,
I'll be
sir,
here.
in the 36 years that's passed since that time, I'm extremely disappointed with the way that house has been allowed to deteriorate. I've kept my counsel on this issue, and I've remained silent.
Yeah.
But it is extremely disappointing to see that. I live in a house that's significantly older than the one that is in question, not very far away. I've dealt with the Historic Districts Commission, and I have had a very different experience, and it's not because I'm a sitting selectman. It's because I value what they have to say and the guidance they have given me on my own house. You apparently take umbrage to that.
No, that's not the case. When I first bought the place, I was doing everything right. I could have put vinyl siding on, I could have crank out windows, I could have defaced the building. It's people like Peter
That's
Pickford.
not my memory of what you were saying when we met many years ago.
What
You
was
were
your memory?
restoring it to a historic home.
Oh, that's probably...
And I
yeah.
enjoyed that because I lived in one myself.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
still do.
And my idea, doing a restoration probably would have meant put new siding on it, vinyl siding, put an octagon window in, and Peter talked me out of it. He said, no, you want square windows in the brick end, you want 12 over 12 windows. So my idea of restoration and what really is restoration are two different things. And Peter enlightened me, and I tried doing everything right, and it only got wet in the last few years when...
That house has deteriorated markedly in the last 20 years. You can't just say it just started falling apart a few years ago.
I'm still paying $8,000, or very close to $8,000 taxes every year. And you know, when I try to take something to the dump, I'm denied. They won't let me, even though I own the property. No one's living in the house. They said, oh, you have to live in the house. So if I cut grass or do anything, I can't even get rid of it. They've done everything in their power to prevent me from going ahead on that property. But anyways, I've talked to Peter Pickford. He's prepared to work on it. We've gone over some plans. I have estimates that I received yesterday from demolition people to take it down, as well as the barn. And I'd be quite curious to see what your estimates are. I'm sure they're a lot different than mine, because he wants to probably make John pay as much as possible, but I have real estimates here.
You're John Pitts?
I am.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, you were given a very specific letter. You were at the HDC hearing, right? You were at the Districts Commission hearing on, when was it, October 16th or whenever it was, right?
No, October of this year?
August, I'm sorry, August.
Okay, yes.
So, and then you got this letter. Are you aware of the content of the letter?
First of all, I never received the letter. Again, I'm telling you, I never received a letter. I don't know where they're delivering things. My tax bill goes to a P.O. box.
Excuse me?
We have the green card on this.
Yes.
But at some point you became aware of the letter because you emailed Mr. Clancy to say that you put the fence up.
I received a call from someone from Town Hall, and they said, you have a letter, and it was read to me, and that's where we worked on it.
Well, I'm just being told that this was sent to you by certified mail. Town has the green card. You declined to give your residential address, positing a post office box as the way to reach you. And you say you didn't get this, so this is problematic for me. I don't like being in this circumstance at all, sir. I don't. I can tell you that genuinely. But I have listened to the deputy fire chief, the police chief, the building commissioner, the unanimous decision of the historic people, as well as the recommendation of the professional staff of this office. And this is an extreme problem for me. This is a very, very, uncomfortable position that we find ourselves in. And this isn't something that just materialized. This is something that's been going on for decades. When I had red hair, and that's been a long time. I had curls even. It's gone. Peter actually had hair back then. Come on. What are you doing?
Well, anyways.
What are you doing?
Well, I think we're doing the right thing. We have Peter on board.
What is that? Don't put Peter Bickford in this.
Well,
you're
I'm not going
the
to
guy
be doing the
that's the
carpentry.
owner.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing the carpentry. What I've done is, I think, secured the right people. Again, he's sending out a letter, and I've talked to some code experts, and they're saying...
How long have you known Peter Bickford?
probably 35 years.
And you're just getting around to calling them
40.
now?
No, I've talked to Peter many times.
Do you want to say anything here, or do you just want to sit there and?
No, I'd like to say something when you call on me. I get a chance.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Pitts?
No, I think that just about does it. But
I
anyways, all I
think
know
so.
is, I think what you heard was not the total truth. I never borrowed $250 to work on that house, and I'd like to know where you got the information.
Mr. Clancy doesn't lie, and I really wish that we terminate the conversation if it's heading in that
Well,
direction.
it's on record, and he said I
Thank you very much. Peter, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Paul.
Sure,
Peter
Peter.
Bickford, 65 Lozelle Street. John Pitts called me at I was going to say the 11th hour, but I guess it's after midnight,
Well after.
well after. And I'd like to state that I do not disagree with the town's position. I am here for the sake of the house. I think I stated at the Historic Districts Commission meeting in August, I don't want to see the house go in a dumpster. So I met with John this weekend and talked about the severity of the problem he's in. Should have acted before. He understands that.
Did you get to go inside and take a look at the interior?
I'm sorry?
Did you get to go inside and take a look at the interior?
I've been in before, too.
Okay.
So while we're addressing that, I'll just give my opinion that, yes, I agree, it's a safety hazard. It's, I'd hate to see any of the town officials have to go in there in an emergency situation. A lot of the interior framing is compromised, but it's my opinion that, and I've worked on many old houses, dismantled them, put them back together. I have a barn.
Yep.
On my property that's middle 1800s, we took down from Weymouth and
Yep.
restored, put back up, solid as a rock. The corner posts, the ridge, the basic framing, the summer beams, the girts, the sills are in remarkably good shape for what the weather has done to this house in the last 30, 40 years.
It's all post and beam.
All post and beam, mortise and tenon.
Are the sills
tremors.
rolling at all?
Pardon me?
Are the sills rolling at all?
Is it rolling?
Yeah, they rolling?
There's some roll in it. But if you look at the outside, Paul, you look at the ridge line, you look at the corner posts, the corners, the rake boards, true as an arrow. There's a little bit of sag in the front of the house above the main front door. And for a house 300 so years old, that's not bad. So can it be restored? Of course it can. I know what the engineer's report, I've read it, for the town has said, and I agree with that. What I don't agree with is that it's got to be torn down for the reasons that they state. I think it can be restored. I know why they're saying it's got to be torn down, because it's a safety hazard. And if somebody went in and jumped on some of the floors, as I said, some of the floor joists compromised, of course. All that's got to be repaired, restructured, and dealt with if the town sees fit. I had a great talk with Mike today. He was nice enough to accommodate me at his office, and then returned a call that, or answered a call that I made to him later. Whether we can work out a deal to get this project going, of course with time constraints, because I understand what the problems have been in the past. All I can do is represent myself. If I were going to be involved in this project, I would make sure that.
Well, is he going to hire you?
He's going to hire me if.
Are you going to hire Peter Bickford?
Yeah.
I would certainly draw up a contract and a set of provisions that would have to meet the town's approval. So if the town sees fit, and I understand the circumstances that it may not, if it does, I'm willing to get involved in the project, and as I said before, I think that's a significantly historical house. I hate to see it knocked down, destroyed, and in a dumpster. So that's all I can say for myself. And
How long is it going to take you to draw up a contract?
I would hope I could have one in a week or two.
I gotta say, you know, I agree with Paul. I don't like being in this position. You know, I was on the historic house tour a week or so ago. You know, the historic assets of this town are important to our legacy. I was in the Benjamin Lincoln House, fabulously restored and maintained. I mean, it's exquisite. And to drive by this historic asset and see it decaying like this over such an extended period of time, this didn't just happen, is the frustration, right?
Right.
And, you know, and I feel like you're putting it back on us to say, you know, now we're taking some action, or in a position to take some action, and I don't mean you. I feel like the situation demands action by the Board of Selectmen, and, you know, I feel like we're, you know, potentially finally getting your attention when it's in a situation where the more we delay, the more we have potential public safety issues. So here's a potential for me. I don't know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
But we don't meet again until October 30th, right? I could be persuaded to wait till October 30th. But on October 30th, what I would want is a detailed contract and a detailed plan, a detailed timeline. And I don't know if I can do this, council, but I would want check-in points from you and from Mr. Pitts to make sure that this thing stays on target. You know, this would be a tight agreement that this work's got to get done, and it's got to get done in a meaningful time frame. So the first order of business, it strikes me, not being a builder or an engineer, is that in the very short term, the structure's got to be made safe and tenable for the winter months. So I'm assuming, you know, not much of anything's going to happen in terms of restoration or repair during that period. On the other hand, I think we need to get joists or something in there to make sure the thing's not going to fall down. And, you know, and I think we need to understand that this looks to me to be a significant financial undertaking. And so if Mr. Pitts is willing to substantiate that he can make good on these promises, then, you know, potentially I would entertain that no later than October 30th. But otherwise, I just, you know, I feel like we're a little backed in a corner here.
Just for clarity also, the vote tonight is not a vote to mandate that the structure come down or to approve the structure to come down. It's an appropriation to allow the building inspector to exercise his authority and discretion if he thinks that that's necessary. So if you, and this is what I told the Historic District Commission, if the appropriation is made, it doesn't mean that the building inspector goes out tomorrow and demolishes the property. If there's a viable plan that's brought forward to him, he can certainly listen to it and decide whether to implement it, exercising his discretion. So there's no reason why they can't continue to work with him. I think the real question is, do you move it to the next step by making the appropriation?
Yep.
That's really, just to be clear about it, it's not a vote to require demolitions.
Appreciate that, John.
Got to just say thanks for listening to me. And I agree with you, Karen. It'd have to be a airtight contract with timelines and legally drawn up official document for you to allow this to continue.
Here's what I'm willing to do.
We had a very similar discussion in August at the Historic District.
Thanks, Paul.
where they asked for an additional 30 days.
All right.
So it's not the first time that we've...
If this was anybody but you coming up here, Peter, I'd say no. But I've served with you on the planning board, I've known you for 50 years. And I know your work, and I know what you've done, and I respect that. Mr. Pitts, if you're serious about this, you're going to enter into a contract with Peter Bickford, and you're going to provide us with a mailing address that allows for service to you, no P.O. Box stuff. You're going to allow for us to enter the property and survey it. You're going to work cooperatively with the town. I'm willing to defer this decision, notwithstanding the recommendations of the building commissioner and the police and fire, because to me, the house, for all the reasons that Peter Bickford has stated, once it's gone, it's not recoverable. But if, and you don't need to respond to this, but if you continue to frustrate the efforts to save the house by whatever beliefs you have in place currently, October 30th is going to come. We're going to take the vote, and then it's in someone else's hands. You work with the town cooperatively. You've got somebody who can fix the house. I understood exactly what he was saying. I have my own opinion, but I'm keeping it to myself. If you're truly serious, this is it. This is the last outing, okay?
But I have a question.
He's got to come to the microphone.
Microphone.
I have a question regarding all the work, everything I intend to do there. According to Mr. Clancy, you still have to go before the zoning. So I could do all this work for nothing. What's the incentive for me to fix something up only for them to say, oh, you don't have the zoning? Of course,
Please don't negotiate, sir. Stabilize the house so that it can be saved. If you and Mr. Bickford are entering into a contract to do that, do it so timely, get moving on it, don't wait for the spring. Time is now.
Yeah.
Time is now. You can work out your zoning issues in some other forum. This is not it. This is just Karen Johnson and Paul Healy deciding on whether to entertain a reserve transfer to take the house down. We're giving that a little more time based on what Mr. Bickford has said here tonight. But not a lot more time.
Yeah.
It's October 16th. October 30th is 2 weeks from now. 36 years and 2 weeks.
And from the time I bought the house, it was worked on for 10 years. And it stopped after the Historic Society started.
You need to cease that line of dialogue. It's not helping here. You need to face the reality that this house is either going to get torn down or it's going to be saved.
Yeah.
How much do you want to save it?
Yeah.
It rests with you ultimately. I'm going to come in here on October 30th and I'm going to know the answer to that question. Because if I don't see you in the audience and I don't see Mr. Bickford in the audience, I'll have my answer.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? I do have estimates. If it's going to come down, I have estimates to take it down to.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask you to intercede a little bit regarding a couple of unregistered vehicles on the property as well?
You're going to get those out of there, right?
Well, I was told you're allowed to have one. Of course, I talked to an attorney, and he told me that he spoke to you, and he said to you, he goes, you realize that is unenforceable. And you looked at him and said, that's correct. I don't know if that's true or not, but I probably could get that attorney to come in and...
Can't you call Everett's and just have them towed out of there?
I could. One is...
But seriously, I mean, this is, the thumb in the eye. I get it.
Yeah.
You've made your point.
Yeah.
I know the vehicles. I've seen them there for years. It's time. You're either serious about saving the house or you're not. You got 2 weeks.
Okay. One question. If we save the house, could I save the house only to find out, I'm going to be meeting with a zoning specialist this week anyways, but if I go into a contract, spend money to do a restoration on the property, only to find out, say, well, guess what? We're not going to give you the zoning.
I don't know what that means.
I know.
So I think you have 2 weeks, really, to figure this out. And like Paul said, I think we would all like to see that house saved. We know the value of that historic asset. And I get that there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of layers to getting there. But you have 2 weeks to figure that out. So I think with Mr. Bickford's help, and with the help of the second floor staff, you could ask questions of, you need to put together a proposal that meets the sort of general concepts that we've discussed tonight, or really leave us with no alternative. So.
And as a sign of your good faith, you're going to get rid of the vehicles, right?
I'll work on getting rid of them.
By October 30th?
No, come on.
All right.
Seriously, I mean.
Well, I need them out of there in order to work on the place anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
way
Paul,
to look
by
at
October
it,
30th? I'm just curious about the direction.
right?
Yeah.
We're not going to see him by October 30th, right?
Oh, I'm going to do my very best.
You know,
Mr. Chairman, as a sign of good faith, could we get an address for the...
Yeah, we need an address. We need an
Yeah,
address
I'll
before you
bring
leave.
that up. I'm
Before you
coming
need
up
to.
tomorrow.
I need that right
Address.
now.
Yeah, we need an
I need that
address.
right now.
Okay,
I need that right now,
Okay.
and give it to Mr. Coughlin.
sure. I'll write it down. I don't want to put it out for the whole town, so
No.
I'm going to write it down.
Mike might have another comment.
Yes, Mike?
If you're going to allow Mr. Pitts another 2 weeks to the 30th,
Do we need to,
could we make sure that he follows the letter that was August 20th, 2018?
well, and we want to add to that, right? So, because he's got to follow these conditions, but the other condition that Paul and I think, are talking about is, if he comes back with this contract, the contract has to give a detailed timeline for compliance. So, okay. Right,
Do we have the address?
okay.
So the vehicles are going to be out by the 30th. You're going to have a contract with Mr. Bickford. There's going to be a plan in place to begin work immediately. We're not going to wait through the winter, right?
If we can get this thing done.
All right.
That'll be secured for the winter.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
That'll be part of the contract.
Okay.
Please,
And-
please, just, let's do this.
Mr. Pitts, do you have a
You've made your point.
Do you have a copy of the August 20th letter? Because Mr. Clancy's suggesting that,
The August 24 letter, I don't, like I said, I haven't been receiving things.
this is his.
Well, now that you provided us with your
Can we send
mailing
him-
address, we'll make sure that you get everything.
Send him a copy.
If certified
At
mail
that new
comes, it usually
address?
goes to the mailbox, and I would have received something,
what he
Jack,
said.
I would
Oh,
have picked up
yeah.
certified mail, so that's why I thought a P.O. box was adequate. So as far as I'm concerned, I never was adequately notified.
Okay, we're
I'm just
all
saying.
we're all on the same page now.
Yeah,
I just want to be
I'm just
sure.
saying, you can send it to the wrong address. I mean, that was my father's, John Pitts.
You know, I'll be honest with you, sir, the whole town's watching this exchange, and they're making up their own minds on this. There's a lot of people who want the house torn down.
Sure.
There's a sentiment that wants it saved.
Oh, yeah.
You just happen to run into a couple people that are trying to give you
Yeah.
the second shot, but it's really late.
Yeah, well,
And that's my
I agree.
point.
But every developer I've talked to wants to tear it down anyways. They want it down.
Well, then you're talking to the wrong people.
No, I know,
You've got
I know,
Peter
no.
Bickford there to help you.
Yeah.
Take counsel to what he recommends and says, I have no financial interest whatsoever in any of this, just for the record, so that it's clear. But
I know.
I just feel uneasy about, you know, this whole subject matter. But at the same time, I respect what Mr. Clancy is saying here and the concerns that he's articulated, as well as the police chief and the deputy.
Well, and so
Legitimate.
to that end, Paul,
Legitimate.
can we say as a condition for the shore up that Mike gets to go down and verify that it's done to his standards? Can we make sure?
That's a given.
Okay.
You've got to allow the building inspector access to the property.
Mike's got another question.
An engineer will have to decide. An engineer will have to decide on how the building is to be secured and supported.
I'm sure Mr. Bickford can facilitate all that.
The structural engineer I have, I mean, he's,
You know, I'm going to defer to Mr. Bickford. He's the one that's got credibility with me,
okay, good.
with all due respect.
Sure, yeah,
You and I only met once briefly a long time ago.
that's right. Crushing the house.
I was in uniform
I
at
know
the
you were.
time.
Like you said, you had red hair too, I remember.
Yeah.
So can I ask, Mr. Clancy, you'll send, okay, you'll send another copy of the August 20th letter, and maybe with a cover letter outlining some of the things we talked about tonight?
Sure.
Okay, just so we're all clear on what we've heard and what we're agreeing to, and that really the timeline to finalize this detailed contract and timeline and construction timeline is October 30th, right? Okay, all right, thank you.
Nice seeing you again, Mr. Pitts.
Good seeing you. Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Take care.
Looking forward to those cars coming out of there.
Thanks a
You're
lot,
welcome,
thanks for being
Peter.
here. No?
All right.
Want to vote on some liquor licenses?
I think the deputy wants to say something before we move on to the...
Deputy Powers from the Fire Department. Paul, you mentioned, we all know what this house is from the Fire Department. And a comment I wanted to make is, everybody in the Fire Department knows this building is unoccupied, but every time I go to a fire,
Yeah.
unoccupied building, in the town of Hingham, somebody always, in the crowd says, and it happened on Hobart Street,
Yeah.
somebody says, I think there's somebody in there. So the Hingham Fire Department is going to do its best to make sure there's not somebody in there. There is currently a fence around this building. I don't know what it is, but every time I've gone to an unoccupied home, the comment is always made around the fire, there's somebody in there. So, but I just wanted to make that point clear. and
I hear you,
appreciate what
Bill,
You guys are doing.
and I respect the risk that the fire department faces anytime it goes to a working fire. You know, I'm trying to balance respect for property rights, you know, with public safety needs and what's in the best interest of the town. You know, it's no secret, I've communicated it to the town administrator that I've been very uneasy about this. But yet I understand the building commissioner and the police and fire have to do their jobs. You know, I'm hoping that, you know, this 2-week period, you know, results in something that, you know, satisfies everyone.
Yeah, it sounds good. No,
It may anger everybody, but I hope
Yeah,
it satisfies everyone.
yeah.
It's definitely, you know, look, your department and the police department were top of mind for me in approaching this, and it puts us in a really difficult position.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to state that the fire department does appreciate what Mike has done and what you people are doing. And it's interesting, the night of the Hobart Street fire, I actually called Peter Bickford.
I remember you telling me that story, yeah.
Because Peter knew the owner, and he got us some information that we needed.
Right.
Because there was a funky green liquid coming out of the house, but,
Milt Ingram was an interesting man.
yes, he was.
Yes.
Yeah. Good, all
Yes.
right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience on this.
Yes, James.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike, thanks for all the work on this, I appreciate it.
We're well on the way.
Thank you.
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street. I came prepared to beseech you to make things work and to point out that once the building is gone, it's gone. So I congratulate you on coming up with a good resolution that one. I think the town should be proud of the efforts of the two of you. And let's hope that people follow through on the opportunity you've given them. Thank you.
As this issue and with every issue we confront, we're just trying to do the right thing. But let's not belabor it and get on with the motion so that we can conclude our business here tonight.
So we've reviewed 3, 4, 5 one-day wine and liquor licenses. Chief has signed off, so the files are intact. So with that, I move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Laura Glennon on behalf of South Elementary School for the South Elementary Fall Social to be held at Hingham Heritage Museum on Friday, November 9th, 2018, from 6:30 PM to 10:30 PM.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Michael Busick on behalf of the South Shore Conservatory for Crescendo live storytelling at South Shore Conservatory on Saturday, October 27th, 2018, from 6 PM to 9 PM.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Tom Hoffman on behalf of South Shore Snap for Animal House 40th Anniversary Party to be held at Mass Movement CrossFit on Saturday, November 3rd, 2018, from 6 PM to 10 PM.
Second, all those in favor?
I move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Patricia McKenna on behalf of WSM Hingham Properties LLC for Booze and Brews to be held at Derby Street Sidewalks, alcohol station fully contained between REI and Kohl's on Saturday, October 27, 2018, from 1 PM to 3 PM.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Jay Tolman on behalf of Congregation Sherei Shalom for Dueling Pianos fundraiser to be held at Congregation Sherei Shalom on Saturday, October 27, 2018, from 7:30 PM to 10 PM.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Town reports. Michelle?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, Thomas?
Nothing, thank you.
Nice job to both of you tonight. Two really comprehensive reports on both 3A and the green communities. Nice job. My turn. Hingham Arts Walk on Sunday. Again, to quote Paul Healy, great take. Everybody was out yeah, you said good. You just said good take. This was a great take. Weather cooperated. Folks were out. I guess it's just amazing to me how talented people are in this community. There's a band playing, a lot of people around. I think great for the merchants, great for the square, and again, beautiful works of art. I think the displays are ongoing, so if you didn't get a chance to go down there on Sunday, please make a trip to the square and its environs. And then today, I was fortunate enough to attend the Rosie's Place lunch in at the Boston Convention Center, and I bring that up because every single year, Hingham in particular is represented by dozens of tables at that event. There were over 2,000, mainly women at the Boston Convention Center supporting homeless women and their families serviced by Rosie's Place. There are a number of leaders in that organization that reside here in town. And, to me, I think when you come home here, you're so mindful of how lucky you are to live in this community. And then when you go to an event like that and you realize just how dire the need is, it's stark. And so I really applaud all those folks who attended today, and I particularly applaud the leadership shown by women and men in this community to help the work of Rosie's Place.
I hope the public appreciates the dilemma we sometimes find ourselves in making decisions in behalf of the town. I think the house across from Loring Hall is a case in point. We're trying to do the right thing. Hopefully the owner appreciates that it's very late in the day, and ultimately I want to be satisfied that we tried to do everything before we had to make a hard decision. Maybe we won't need to, who knows, but we'll see. On that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second, good night, everyone. Aye.
Good night. Aye.